All right, so Joe Manchin continues to be one of the primary blockades as one of the most conservative members of the Democratic Party, and with the continuing 50-50 split that Democrats are facing in the Senate, he wields an extraordinary amount of power, and so we've been talking about what he's been doing with that power. We can point to some corruption where, for example, he opposed the $15 minimum wage, and he also just so happens to take a lot of money from industries that have a vested interest in keeping wages low. So there's a corruption side of it, but on top of that, and an area that I haven't really been talking about as much is I think that Joe Manchin is just really stupid, because he did an interview with Chris Cuomo and it was really revealing because he just really doesn't seem to understand the political moment that we're in right now. He also doesn't seem to understand the history, like, for example, under the Obama administration, when Republicans would pretend like they were going to work with Democrats on pieces of legislation. The legislation would then be significantly watered down, and then Republicans wouldn't vote for it anyways. And it seems like we're lining ourselves up for this exact same pattern happening again and again under the Joe Biden administration. And so let's just go ahead and listen to some of what Joe Manchin had to say here, and I'll walk my way through it because there's a lot of stuff that we got to get into of what he's wrong about and misunderstanding about this moment.
Good to see you, Senator. They won't know it by your name, but they should know it by your good looks and your heritage. You have Italian blood in you. You know this proverb. Do you think that your party is being set up to be fooled again by Mitch McConnell?
I don't think so. I really don't. First of all, Chris, it's always good to be with you. And next of all, I don't. And I'll give you a few examples. The hate crimes bill we just passed 2 weeks ago, 94-1. I don't think there was a Democrat in Congress or a senator in Congress, or especially in the Senate, that thought that that would pass by 94-1. We had an amendment process on the floor. I commend Chuck Schumer for allowing the amendments to be on the floor. The Republicans put their amendments up, which would have altered the bill. They failed in those amendments. We voted on the bill in its entirety, and it passed. I'll take you clear back to 2013, what was it, 2013 or 2015?
Let's pause before he goes to that next point. The COVID-19 hate crimes bill that he's talking about here that passed 94-1, this bill had no real teeth to it. This was a bill that was basically just declaring hate crimes are bad. Okay, this isn't something that's restructuring the shaping of our policing system. It's not something that's reshaping the real on-the-ground accountability for hate crimes in any way. That's why it was supported 94-1, because it's not something that's addressing any of the structural issues within our country. And by the way, as they pass the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, you still have Republicans and Democrats going out there spreading ridiculous Cold War 2.0 propaganda against China and ramping up the rhetoric and tensions in that way. So it wasn't a bill that had any massive substance to it, and that's why it was able to pass 94-1. So him propping that up as a comparison to, let's say, infrastructure or tax or healthcare legislation, they're just completely incompatible comparisons here.
I think. No, I'm sorry, 2017. John McCain at that time. They were trying to get under President Trump, trying to do away with the Affordable Care Act. And they voted that down, didn't do it. So I still have confidence, and I have faith that we will come together. I have faith that democracy will survive. But it can only survive as the republic that we know here that we live in, as if there's a two-party system, at least a two-party system, but also a Senate that has minority input. And I'll remind you again, there was every year, since Donald Trump was president, every year he tried to pressure my Republican colleagues to get rid of the filibuster so they could pass overreaching, overwhelming bills that would not be good for our country. I didn't think so, and they pushed back on that. And we're talking to a group of them right now. We continue to have good dialogue. So whatever Mitch McConnell, Senator McConnell, I'm sorry, from Kentucky said, as I just heard, I don't know what his reasoning is for that, but I can assure you there are Republicans working with Democrats that want to make something happen.
But will they vote? You know, just for some context that you laid out in the history, McCain was the one vote that stood between Trump getting what he wanted and not. There was one soul of conscience. And I take your point, so I don't see that as working together. But I do agree with you about process. I think it's the right thing to do to put it into committee, have the amendments, see the markup, because then you allow good faith of process. That is minority involvement as envisioned by the founding fathers with respect to the Senate. The filibuster was not. You know your history. That comes out of Jim Crow.
Okay, so Chris Cuomo, listen, not a big fan of Chris Cuomo, but he's 100% correct here. The filibuster, which a lot of Republicans and conservative Democrats talk about as if it's this long-standing institution that's been here through the entirety of our country, it just hasn't. It was literally something that was created specifically to reinforce the Jim Crow era and those laws, those racist, discriminatory laws. And Chris Cuomo goes on to say, has there ever been anything good that was done that came out of the filibuster? Not really. And so it's something that's just an archaic part of our system that we should be getting rid of. And yet Joe Manchin is sitting here ready and willing to be duped again by Mitch McConnell. And the key point of what Chris Cuomo was saying there was, do you think they're going to vote on the legislation? Sure, you can go behind the scenes and have these conversations with Republicans. You can go and ask what Mitch McConnell's opinion on a piece of legislation is, and then he'll bring you a counteroffer that's embarrassing and pathetic. But the question is, are they going to vote for that? Because what happened under Obama, just as an example, with the Affordable Care Act, which originally started out from the Heritage Foundation, so it was a right-wing think tank piece of legislation from the outset. Then there were negotiations that happened between Democrats and Republicans. They watered it down significantly, and then they go to vote on it, and Republicans don't even vote on it. None of them voted on it. So what is the point of having these behind the scenes, bipartisan negotiations if you're not going to vote on it in a bipartisan way? Or what is the point of having these negotiations at all and watering down the bill at all if you're going to pass it through the process of budget reconciliation? Again, because you're not going to get any of the Republican votes on it. So you're not going to get the Republican votes anyways. So why would you water down the bill? And the answer to that, he doesn't have one, but the actual answer to that is that he doesn't actually support the bills in their entirety. He wants to water down the bills for absolutely no reason. So let's skip ahead a little bit here and continue on, because he, again, just literally has no idea what he's talking about. And the fact that he's getting exposed by Chris Cuomo, of all people, is pretty telling in and of itself. So let's just go ahead and continue here.
Used it already.
But I'm just saying, Senator, right now you have infrastructure, you have needs for families, you have a lot of gross deficits that you're dealing with. There's a chance that you get none of it passed. Forget about, background checks or anything like that.
Let's see what we've done already, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Look what we've done. $1.9 trillion. Look what we did last year in all bipartisan way. Look what we've done this year. We didn't do it with a bipartisan way, but we did it because it needed to be done with the pandemic that we had. We did it at $1.9 trillion.
But you didn't do it bipartisan.
No, we had a process of bipartisanship to a certain extent.
But then there were no votes.
There would have been more, but there wasn't. But there was one. Well, we didn't try. We had some votes as far as in the.
But they went through the reconciliation process, Senator, as you know. You went through reconciliation because they weren't going to work with you on it. McConnell had it locked down.
But then basically, then we did a hate crimes bill, and we went through a process where we had amendments on the floor. Let the bills go through. Let's look at this infrastructure bill, truly on traditional infrastructure, and then one on human infrastructure, and basically look at the pay-fors that we're willing to.
And what if none of the Republicans will vote at the end of it? Would you reconsider how to get it done because you know how important it is?
Well, then you have to basically look at what package we put forth that was reasonable, that basically everybody had input, and even if we made adjustments, let's say with amendments, and at the end of the day they don't vote for it, then we'll have another discussion then.
So you're open to another discussion if they show bad faith after you give them due process?
Well, you're talking about reconciliation. You're talking about starting out with reconciliation.
No, I'm not.
Where there's very little input.
No, I'm not. I argued your point consistently. I think you guys are making a mistake by forcing the process and allowing them to claim high ground and saying, look, they won't even let us look at these bills. They give us no input. I think you should have the amendment. I think you should have the markups.
Go ahead, okay. We agree on that. Joe Biden has got more done in 100 days.
But not with them.
Any president in my time that I can recall.
Not with them.
Basically, he got more done. He's put a plan out there, and he got more done.
But not with them.
We got it done, okay? And
but
we're
not
moving
with
in the right
them.
direction.
Not with them.
But you've heard Joe Biden. He wants it to work. It will work.
All right, so yeah, I mean, we can just go ahead and cut it off there because Chris Cuomo was right, saying repeatedly over and over again, not with them. Yeah, Joe Biden got the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package through, but not with them. Republicans didn't vote for it. And yes, Republicans are going around and taking credit for some of that, but none of them voted for it. None of them. So how are you going to say Joe Biden has gotten so much done and you're still advocating for the process that has not worked? You're advocating for working with Republicans when the big piece of legislation that we have an opportunity to look at how Republicans acted, they didn't vote for it. And then again, he just dives back onto the COVID-19 hate crimes bill, which again was just a bill that said, hey, if you think hate crimes are bad, vote for this bill. I mean, it was that simple. This was the easiest home run of all time. And that's because it didn't have any substantive teeth behind it, like some of the things that we saw in the COVID-19 package, like some things that we're going to see in this next infrastructure package. So he's saying he wants to see, I guess he's saying he wants to see two different bills, one for physical infrastructure and one for what he calls human infrastructure. That's nonsense. What you should be doing, if you actually wanted to get something done concrete for the American people, take it home and be able to say, this is what we were able to get done for you, and it's big and it's bold and it's something people can get behind, then what you would do is you would say, we're going to include all of this, human infrastructure, physical infrastructure, etc., healthcare infrastructure, and you add it all into this bill, and you go through the process of budget reconciliation, and you ignore the Senate parliamentarian and don't let them stand in the way because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have the ability to overrule the Senate parliamentarian. You ignore the Senate parliamentarian, and then you pass the bill in its entirety. Why the fuck would you ever work with Republicans who are openly saying they're not going to work with you in good faith? The quote at the bottom of the screen in this interview from Mitch McConnell, it says, quote, 100% of my focus is on stopping Biden. He's openly saying he's not going to legitimately work with Biden. He has no interest in coming to the table in good faith and negotiating these bills with Biden. And even if they were, why would you want that? If you believe in the things that you're trying to pass in these bills, then you would fight for those things. Why are you coming to the table and being like, well, I'm really looking forward to any opportunity that I have to water down this bill? That's literally what he's saying here. So it's just a complete nonsense position that he holds. What this interview tells me is that he has no idea what he's doing right now. He has no idea what the current political situation calls for. He is, unlike what he said at the beginning of that clip, he is 100% about trying to get Democrats to fall for the same fucking tricks that Mitch McConnell played under Obama. They're just going to drag it along, and they're just going to water down the bills, and then they will not vote for it in the end. They will abandon you in the end and make you look like idiots. And then on top of that, they'll probably take credit for the bill anyway. So the answer to all of these problems, whatever the legislation is that they're bringing forward, is don't work with Republicans when you don't have to. You're just going to water down the bills for no reason, and it's not going to make it any likelier to get passed. So Joe Manchin, not only corrupt, but apparently also really stupid.